Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the GOP convention has come and gone, and we're sort of in the situation kind of we were in before, where that we're scratching our heads, trying to figure out which way Trump's going to go. Particularly on foreign policy, but to a certain extent on domestic policy. I mean, on domestic policy, we thought, oh, he's going to do a kind of do protectionism and all the rest. Yeah, manufacturing industry and all that stuff. And yet, the talk is that he's going to appoint Jamie Dimon as his Treasury Secretary. Jamie Dimon, the worst of the Wall Street titans and corporate malfeasers,
the biggest leech in the world.
Yeah, that's right. I was trying to remember the name of the guy who was head of Goldman Sachs. I can see his face, but that horrible, obnoxious figure who, from the 2008 era, the time of the crash. Jamie Dimon was a key player in that, and then there was this guy from Goldman Sachs. Anyway,
well, I mean, they're all colorful, very, very fabulously rich, but they're all the same person.
Exactly the same person. Anyway, so we don't
know. Carlson?
No. I mean, Paulson had been at Goldman Sachs, but this was the successor to Paulson. Yeah, but you're right. Paulson.
Gaggle's turning into Trivia Pursuit.
Yeah, Paulson was the Treasury Secretary under Bush, but he had been at Goldman Sachs. Yeah. But anyway, and then he wants to keep Powell on at the Fed. So, that seems not exactly a Trumpian person, and bringing on Larry Kudlow, tax cuts impresario himself, and Arthur Laffer, that's a name from the past, from the
70s, everybody.
Yeah, the Reagan era. But then on foreign policy, we have the same issue that we had in 2015, 2016, which is that Trump talks about America first, and we naturally think of America first. We go back, oh yeah, Charles Lindbergh, because we know what Lindbergh meant by America first. Was basically we just Americans preoccupy themselves with America, what's good for Americans. We don't sit there trying to figure out what's good for the rest of the world. And then when Pat Buchanan emerged as a figure in the Republican Party in the 1980s, also that he revived the America First program, precisely that Americans should concern themselves with American national interests. But Trump has embraced that, but there is something else going on in which other people understand it. You mean America first means that America gets to do whatever it wants. It bombs, sanctions, pummels, destroys, overthrows governments it doesn't like, and it doesn't worry too much about what anyone else has to say about it.
It has less worry about what's going on at home too.
Exactly, and so that's a lot of people think, and so we saw that in evidence at the GOP convention, where we had that dreaded figure of Mike Pompeo, who looks quite terrifying now that he's lost so much weight. At least when he was Secretary of State, he had a kind of roly-poly, kind of jovial look about him.
But he still can pounce.
Yeah, now he looks kind of like a Dracula-like figure. And then you have people like Michael McCall, who's the head of the House Intelligence Committee. Also, he understands America first as America gets to do whatever it wants. And when he was interviewed by Michael Tracy, like, well, what do you think Trump is going to do on Ukraine? He said, oh, I think he's going to send, to Ukraine all the arms Ukraine needs to win this war. Unlike Biden, he's going to allow Ukraine to win this war. And he claims that he's a follower of Trump. So, and of course, Pompeo himself is clearly angling for a cabinet position. He's not just
Secretary of Defense.
Secretary of Defense. So we're back to where we were.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? Which way is it going to be? Trump's going to say, keep everybody happy, and then he's going to allow Pompeo, McCall, Marco Rubio, and the rest of them take over his policy. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, Glenn Greenwald covered this in a way, and he called it a mishmash. I call it, extreme tensions, okay? Because it's all on display. There's nothing hidden about it. David Sachs his, compared to David Saxon and J.D. Vance on one side, and then Mike Pompeo and Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley was there.
Yeah. Yeah.
God sake.
Yeah.
And apparently, from what I've heard, is that she said, she was invited, and Trump apparently, I don't know who was sitting next to him. It was Ben Carson or Tucker Carlson. No, she asked me to come here. Okay. So, again, I mean, if you can read lips, you can see, even that shows the tension of what's going on.
It shows how obnoxious she is, because that's a really obnoxious kind of lie. Oh, he invited me and I accepted his invitation. And it's no, I never invited her.
Yeah, but I mean, this is on the one hand, you can say, well, this is coalition building, putting everybody under the big tent. No, it's bringing poison into the room. Okay. I mean, come on, everybody. Let's think about Trump's first term. They rolled him, and they know they can roll him, and they'll roll him again.
Right.
Okay. So, I'm very disappointed. Obviously, George and I talk more about foreign policy than domestic, but we don't live in the United States. I mean, so that's one of the reasons. But this good feeling in the hall, never seen anything like it. People are all together. Love is most important. But nothing has been resolved from what I can see at all.
No, absolutely. And I think the Ukraine situation is the most glaring, because we have Trump saying, I'm going to wrap this up as quickly as possible. I can get it done in one day. And then, Viktor Orban sort of suggesting, yeah, he's going to get it done in one day. And then, well, how is he going to do it? Well, there are clearly those who say, yeah, send everything you've got to Ukraine. Let them go fight. Let them win this. Take off all restraints. Biden's been putting all these restraints on Ukraine. Oh, you're only in the Kharkov region or somewhere just close by the border. No, let them bomb Moscow. They're going to be those people who are going to tell Trump to do just that. Yeah, you've got to be different from Biden. Let Ukraine do that. So, those voices are going to be there. I mean, they may not prevail, but then you've got Vance. Now, Vance is vice president. The vice president slot, it can be important, or it can be one that can be sidelined in no time at all.
As it usually is.
As it usually is. You just send him off to to attend funerals and conferences that you can't be bothered to attend. So we really don't know. And all the different speculations. Well, will Trump try to secure a ceasefire? Will he get a peace conference? The kind of thing that we had talked about. Oh, he's going to maybe think about a global conference, everybody attends and so on. Maybe, or maybe just that, he'll say, yeah, okay, let's just, I'll be different from Biden. I'm going to show that I'm a real tough guy. It's like,
yeah, well, I mean, what possibly could happen if it comes to pass is that if you have people like Rick Grenell and Mike Pompeo, Radcliffe, I read that list earlier today. They're just going to convince Trump to let JD take care of the border, take care of fentanyl.
Right. Yeah. Right.
That's what I don't think they'll give him a foreign policy.
I don't think so either.
Zero.
Yeah, I agree. Let's do the fentanyl, the border, and then maybe manufacturing. Let's do something on manufacturing industry. How to bring manufacturing back home. Yeah, just concern yourself with that. You're absolutely right. They're not going to give him foreign policy. They say, hey,
Well, I mean, also, okay, that's just the first paragraph of this very, very gloomy essay, because George and I have already laid it out. Okay, you'll segregate JD Vance, but if Trump resists, well, they have the tools. They have the tools.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Well, that's right.
Because I believe these people will turn on Trump, and they'll do it collectively.
Right. Okay? Right. Yeah. No,
and when you have people like Rick Grenell, see, one of the things you have to understand, everyone, it's just not the policy idea that, non-intervention, that's an idea. But you have a apparatus, a vast apparatus, and those that know how the apparatus works will always prevail because you can slow walk, you can postpone, you can sabotage. I mean, there's when you Stalin taught us this. Okay, if you understand how the system works, then you understand how power can be used. Okay, J.D. Vance, again, for the millionth time, I'm very sympathetic to him. I always have been. Though George and I just recently dissected one of his, was it New York Times? New York Times?
What was it? Yeah, I think Washington Post. I don't know.
His op-ed.
Financial Times. Yeah,
Financial Times. I did a forensic breakdown of it. Well, yeah, it's good ideas, nice words, but I mean, is he a selective hawk, a selective anti-hawk?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
what it sounds like here. So, I'm not optimistic. I'm zero optimistic that we're going to see anything new. As a matter of fact, what is it? The interagency consensus is just as powerful now as it was when Trump was president.
And I think that's really the problem, that Trump himself doesn't have any very strong convictions. I mean, there are various aspirations. Yeah, we should have better relations with Russia. Or, yeah, we got to get the Europeans to pay up more money. Yeah, we got to bring this war in Ukraine to an end. But he hasn't figured out any really coherent view of the world. I mean, that was, he hasn't sort of, this is going to be my top priority, my 1, 2, 3, the top 3 priorities. And I'm really going to go in and get that done. And then you would just simply move the bureaucracy to get it done. He kind of wants to get into power, so he says all the right things, to the rally, tells Pompeo what he wants to hear, tells Boris Johnson what he wants to hear, tells Viktor Orban what he wants to hear. But basically he's just saying, well, let's just kick the can down the road, wait till I'm in power, and then we don't have to worry about anything. But that's where you need a kind of a Nixon-like figure who exactly, who basically had 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 things that I need.
Ronald Reagan too.
Ronald Reagan had that. Yeah, that's right. And I think Trump doesn't have that, and that's why I think it's going to be so easy to roll him, because the moment he's going to start, well, what about, maybe we should try to bring this war to Ukraine to an end. He's going to be told, whoa, are you going to surrender to Putin? Are you going to allow Putin to?
Well, what they'll say is, yeah,
Ukraine.
Let's end this war by destroying Russia. That's how we end it.
Yeah, that's right. Peace through strength. I mean, and again, peace through strength means nothing. They all just repeat this: peace through strength. Yeah. So there's a good part. Peace. Oh, everyone's for peace. Strength. That's good. Everyone likes strength. Oh, peace through strength. Okay, but what does it mean? You mean you're just gonna, is it like basically we're gonna have a nice strong army, but we're not gonna use it, or is it we're gonna have, we're gonna pummel everybody, and then we're gonna have peace because everybody's just been flattened?
That's right.
So, I mean, and that's how they maintain that the ambiguity. And I think you're right to be pessimistic, because I think Trump has failed to spell out a clear vision. Otherwise, other than, hey, I'm just going to solve every single problem under the sun when I'm president.
We have the double whammy right here. First, number one, there is no coherent, articulated worldview, and number two, I still doubt if Trump understands how government works.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I mean, look at Nixon. Nixon had, decades and decades of experience about how government works and doesn't work, and how you can make it work. Okay. Ronald Reagan was very fortunate that he had acolytes that just worshipped him, and they did what he wanted in many respects. Okay. I mean,
but he himself, also did very poorly, because I think he did have people who were loyal to him. They
not to his policies necessarily.
Yeah, but exactly. Now, he had some very effective players like James Baker, who wasn't really a Reagan man. I mean, he was a Bush man, but Baker was just very effective. But the rest, like Ed Meese and Deaver and all those people, from the 80s, they were just loyalists from his California days, and they weren't very good at controlling the government, and that's why in the end Reagan got
what I'm thinking about
through Iran-Contra.
I was thinking about just détente with the Soviet Union and arms control.
Right, that was later, but that was already, I mean, if we're talking about his first term, he was kind of all over the place.
Sure. But I mean, what did Bush Senior say the vision thing. Is
The
that what he?
vision thing, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
well, I mean, he did have a problem with that, which was a really tragic moment in geopolitical history because George Bush Senior had a lot of marbles in his corner. He could have played them differently, but he
Right,
didn't.
right.
So,
But that's an interesting case because George Bush Senior was somebody who did know how government worked, and he had
and
effect, and he had an effective team. I mean, that worked as a team, but nobody really knew what the hell they were kind of doing, and in the end, it was sort of kind of arrogant, and just people just took a dislike to him. I mean, it was a very palpable dislike that the American people took to George
yeah,
Bush
well,
Senior and
yeah, I
his team.
remember that. I mean, what happened there, George? I mean, from what I can remember, he wasn't a charismatic figure.
Right.
I mean, not by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he had the Reagan afterglow.
Yes,
Um,
that's
uh,
what got him. Yeah,
and Reagan didn't really campaign for him, but he supported him, at least
yeah.
officially. His health was declining, though we didn't know it at the time. I mean, to what extent at the time? Um, and Gulf War One. I mean,
It was a
I
yeah, it
don't
was
think
a
any contemporary president had those kind of polls.
no, no. I
Okay,
think all of
and
those.
then
Yeah, but
and then read my lips, and then everybody turned
yeah,
against him.
that's right. The reason, but I think they took a dislike to him because he ultimately had that arrogance, the that whole interagency consensus kind of arrogance. He didn't use that term. That somehow when you I'm going to put this team together. You got Cheney, Colin Powell, who was the secretary, James Baker, and they're just very arrogant. They just it was a kind of a ruling elite, a ruling cabal.
Patricians. They were patricians.
Exactly. And then when the economy started tanking, but it didn't tank that badly, but it started tanking, then Bush immediately showed himself to be, well, he's out of touch. He doesn't care very much about and
Remember?
that's right. And that was a classic. That
Okay,
absolutely was.
let's set it up. He was at a debate,
It was
and
it was one of those things they have the what are that called, the town hall. There was a town hall debate with Bill Clinton. And and Bill Clinton, of course, was very good in those settings, and Bush, he liked being president. And when you're president, everybody fawns on you. Everybody's obsequious. So yes, Mr. President, would you like this papers and so on. Nobody ever challenges you. No one ever asks you a difficult question, and that's what he was getting from these audience members, ordinary people. Small business owners, your school teachers. They were asking him awkward questions, and
well, I can
he
remember
wasn't
one of them.
answering them very effectively.
One of them was, if I'm just paraphrasing, of course. How has the economic downturn affected you, Mr. President? And he was like, you mean people of means? And he was just flat-footed. George is right. I mean, he looked completely out of, and he was a patrician type guy. Okay,
Very,
very
very patrician.
rich. Okay,
Yep.
I had a long pedigree in government. You know what his nickname was when he was in Congress? Rubbers.
Rubbers.
Yes, contraception, condoms. Okay, he was big, big behind that for some reason. And I had this very bizarre nickname. But I mean, very much like Joe Biden, George Bush Senior only became president because he was vice president.
But he had the pedigree because his father had been a senator, Prescott Bush. It was a very waspy patrician family. He went to Andover and Yale, and then he volunteered for the war, and then he waltzed into one big job after another. He was head of the RNC, then he was and then he had a few terms in Congress. Then he was director of the CIA. He was the first America's first ambassador, sort of ambassador to China. He was just always destined for, and he looked the classic WASP. He had that bland good looks that American WASPs had, like Nelson Rockefeller had that, John Lindsay had that. They all kind of look the same.
Well, apparently, this is when people started thinking in terms of spin control and all of that, and it was suggested to him that there should be one definitive, single, clearly understood message coming out of the White House every single day to control the narrative. They didn't say it then, but we say it now to control the narrative. And he just said, "No, I don't want it to be about me." He was very, that's something that a WASP doesn't do. Okay, of course, it was to his detriment because Bill Clinton was a media whore.
Right. No, that's right. But again, I mean, George Bush Senior was a very smart guy. I mean, he could talk, about things. He wasn't very articulate, but a very smart guy. I mean, it was obviously a contrast, and it was a contrast that he himself drew from Reagan. I mean, he always felt kind of in Reagan's shadow. Obviously, he was his VP. He had been beaten by Reagan. And I think he resented the fact that he considered himself vastly more intelligent than Reagan, and yet he was the number two to Reagan. So he made a big show that, well, I can talk extemporaneously. I don't need briefings. I don't need notes. But that didn't work for him because I think particularly the people who loved Reagan just didn't like the fact that Bush sort of was distancing himself from his patron.
He was very intimidated also by Reagan because of his popularity. Because, if you look long and hard, you'll see that Ronald Reagan had about 30 jokes, and he told them over and over and over again. He liked and he laughed at his own jokes. Okay. And with those jokes, he could have a room, a hall, or a stadium in his hand. But I don't think George Bush ever told one joke.
No, I don't think so either. No. And if he did, he just mangled it. I mean, he was just, But that's the thing. Reagan was a professionally trained actor. He knew how to deliver a line. I mean, that's what you do. If you're an actor, you know how to deliver a line. Bush mangled things. And in a way, it was because he was so smart. His brain moved faster than his tongue. So he was always ahead of what he was saying, and that's why it often seems so inarticulate and incoherent because he was just thinking very quickly. He was much smarter than his son. I mean, W was never.
Well, and somebody put it to me, looking at the Bush family, who would have thought that George Sr. was the intellectual? Okay. No, but I mean, to put a wrap on this here, George and I are obviously going to talk about the challenges of what could be a Trump foreign policy. Like I said, I have zero confidence that it'll be any different than when he was president, and times are far more worse. But, you can be very smart, you can be very intellectual, but you have to be politically savvy. Ronald Reagan was. Bill Clinton was. You got to give him credit, okay? Barack Obama could deliver a line if he's trained, and he did a good job. He was smooth, suave, okay? And so is Donald Trump in his own Trumpian category. Future historians and psychologists, I mean, there will be Trump studies, okay? There will be institutes of Trump studies somewhere.
But in a way, we come back full circle to the question, will a Trump second term be different from a Trump first term? And so, many people have, firmly predicted, oh yeah, it's going to be very different. Now he's become very adept at at how government works. He's going to put all the right people in. He's not going to allow himself to be outmaneuvered the way he was outmaneuvered in his first term. I don't know. I mean, you're going to bring it back Pompeo? Look at Marco Rubio. He had
almost got on the ticket.
Himself into the running. He was
everyone
in the running.
From what all reports I've seen is that Trump did not make the decision until the last hour.
That's what I saw as well. Yeah.
Marco Rubio was very much in the running. Okay, so what we have here, almost the question that we're posing has almost been answered in front of our eyes during the convention. Mike Pompeo says Trump agrees with me. J.D. Vance says Trump agrees with me. There you go.
That's right.
And Nikki Haley, that little snake, she showed up.
Yes, that's right. So yeah, it's going to absolutely, it's going to be the question. And the reason, see, people like Pompeo, their selling point will be, hey, I know how to run things. I can run a big department. And then somebody else who may be perfectly decent, perfectly sensible is going, he's going to say, yeah, but you don't know how to run a department. I can't put you in as Secretary of State because I don't think you can run. I don't like that what's the name of that Indian guy, which seems quite sensible.
Vivek.
No, well, Vivek's another one, but the one who used to work for Devin Nunes, the
Oh, Patel.
yeah, exactly, Patel, that Cash Patel. He seems quite a sensible person. But I bet when, if he pitches to Trump, I want to be Secretary of State, Trump will say, yeah, but do you know how to run a huge department like the State Department? They say, all you've done is, you've worked for a committee, you've worked as a speechwriter, you've done a few things, written a book, made a film. What makes you think you can run something like a state?
That's very interesting, George. I hadn't thought about that, but in a different way. Where was Patel? Why wasn't he at the convention? Where was McGregor? Why wasn't he at the convention?
I think Cash Patel was there. I didn't see him, but I think.
Well, then I didn't notice. I didn't
Yeah, I
notice.
didn't notice either, but I think I read somewhere he was there. But McGregor, I didn't hear anything about McGregor. That's an interesting. I mean, if Patel was there, why didn't he get a more prominent slot? I mean, prime time. I mean,
Well, I know we're about to wrap this up, but there's one thing we should mention here, everyone, is the very close bond that Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump appear to have right now.
right.
That is, Tucker Carlson is a power center
Yes.
all by himself.
Right.
And Trump knows that.
Right.
Okay. And that's why he was either sitting right next to him or one person displaced in the little viewing box
Yes.
there. That's like, that's royalty. Okay. That's being
you're
on
right.
the pantheon.
Yes, you're absolutely right. He was there, sitting very close to Trump, and of course his son. I think his son was also sitting there. So, from what one can figure out from the dynamics, which is that Tucker Carlson, Don Jr. Are in the sort of the JD Vance wing of the Trump team, and they're obviously going to push for somebody in their way of thinking for the big jobs. But we'll see. I mean, but again, I mean, Trump will want people who can run things. And I think that's a big selling point.
Well,
you're not just going to allow the whole place to go under.
one thing we have to surmise, and I think we already have evidence of it, is that Trump will have a kitchen cabinet, and I think we saw it on display. Okay,
That's very important. You absolutely want to have that. The people, like, in the way Nixon had that. Nixon kind of created a kind of kitchen cabinet, his own particular team. Because he knows you got to have the bureaucracy, somebody who has to know how to run the bureaucracy. But that doesn't mean you're dependent on the bureaucracy. You have your own immediate team of advisors, and I assume Tucker Carlson will be part of that team.
well, I mean, I think,
and Don Jr.
I think it's a fair assumption, because if you look at Tucker Carlson's trajectory, okay, not long ago he was the most popular host on the most popular program on cable TV at Fox News. Now he's freewheeling, doing all kinds of things, doing a lot of quote unquote politically incorrect stuff. That interview with that Palestinian Christian,
Right.
that was something.
Yeah.
That was something. Haaretz has had a big article. He's Tucker Carlson, quote paraphrasing, of course, infamous anti-Semite, speaks at RNC. I mean, they blew a fuse.
Isn't that amazing to call him an anti-Semite? On the basis of what? On the basis of just that interview that he did with that Palestinian Christian. I mean, just to say that, I mean, it's such an absolutely outrageous thing to say. Anti-Semite.
It shows Tucker Carlson's humanity unlike anyone else's.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the most extraordinary interviews I've ever seen in my life. Okay. Right. And that's why they hate him, because it was so powerful. But what's interesting is Tucker's trajectory is he has accepted, maybe not explicitly, but implicitly, is that he is a partisan. He's open who he supports.
Right.
He's kind of unshackled. Okay. Right. And when he speaks, millions of people instantly
right.
about it. No, very few figures like that in the world, and Trump knows that.
That no, it is. I think it's very interesting because he's now become a political player. I mean,
Yep.
he's not just a journalist. He's not a pundit. He's now a player, and he's a player that Trump obviously listens to. I mean, Trump listened to him at the time when he was thinking about attacking Iran. Didn't listen to him over Syria. But clearly he's somebody that whose opinion Trump respects, and clearly he's a part of that. It's very interesting because Tucker started his career among the neocons. I mean, his first job was, I think, working for Bill Kristol at the Weekly Standard. But it's very interesting that those people, those neocons, they were always very slimy and slippery. They were always in the background. They wanted to control and manipulate things, but they never put themselves forward. I don't think Bill Kristol was ever I don't think he ever spoke at any Republican convention, but you always knew he was the power behind the throne, manipulating things. But so, Tucker's very different. I mean, he's now out there and saying, yeah, that's who I am. These are my views. His speech, incidentally, was very good. Easily.
Well, I'm glad you brought it up, George. Where were his notes? Where were his?
No, but
no. Was there anything in the teleprompter? No. Yeah. That was impromptu. That Trump has an eye for that kind of thing. Okay, he was a guy that I mean, Trump having Tucker as an ally to communicate the way Tucker does. Tucker isn't repetitive. He doesn't tell the same, raise the same numbers and all. I think we differ on Trump's acceptance speech. I really didn't like it. The first few minutes I thought was absolutely brilliant. The rest of it, I was very disappointed. But Tucker is just very, very smooth, and he's easy to understand, and he knows exactly what buttons to press.
What he does, and I think, and it's a very rare art, and I don't know anyone who does it as well as he does, which is to relate big issues to ordinary everyday problems. In other words, he's talking about, well, these are the everyday problems, which is let's say families. You have a families in which the father is supposed to look after his wife and his children, and he's supposed to, if necessary, sacrifice himself for his wife and his children. Well, in the same way, political leaders are supposed to look after the people who entrust them with leadership. And that's what our government doesn't do. It's women and children first, out of the door first. And I think the way he kind of can relate big issues to small issues, we're worrying about Ukraine, and yet I'm stepping over junkies on the streets of San Francisco. I mean, it's that's two such vivid images. That's a rare gift, because everyone say, yeah, government only is worrying about Ukraine and not worrying about it, but he actually gives you a really vivid illustration. Wow, he's stepping over a junkie. And while the money is being sent to Ukraine.
That's why Trump wants him in his corner.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And of all the sinister figures George and I have mentioned in this podcast here, there's one that you will at least now approach with caution. Okay. Right. And that will be Tucker Carlson. And that is his evolution. And of course, it's always, swirling rumors, 2028, all that. Tucker's what, 53?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's a young man.
No, he's certainly a contender. But again, he's the contender for the same slot as J.D. Vance is. So, but who knows?
Well, I mean, depending on what transpires, I have never, ever seriously considered Tucker as presidential timber, as they like to say. But let's see what the next 4 years show us.
But again, no, I quite agree. But I think he'd be rather successful. I can see him running for office and being very successful. Well, I mean, he's an attractive, appealing candidate.
Well, he's cut. He has cut him the chains that he self-imposed on himself. He's detached himself from it. That's why I'm changing my opinion, because he's giving us an indication. Right. What he's doing is different than what he did before.
I
And he's
find
also,
it's very interesting. You remember when he was fired by Fox News and all the New York Times and others gleefully reported, well, he thinks he's got a future ahead of him. Ho, ho, ho. Look what happened to the other Fox News celebrities who got fired. They've kind of vanished in the ether. And then they mentioned O'Reilly and various others who did indeed disappear. Well, he hasn't disappeared. He's obviously not going to disappear. So, just because this is what happened before doesn't mean it's going to happen again. But, that's New York
I'm
Times.
going to say something ominously, okay? And I hope Tucker has good security.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, everybody. That's a part of our wrap here on Sunday. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on local, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. We'll have our live stream tomorrow.
Live stream tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So if you're in the United States, you've got to get up, crack of dawn, make a strong pot of coffee. And, it's not quite crack of dawn, but
Don, George, I get up at 5. Okay.
I know. But anyway, please join us. Come with all with as many ideas and questions as possible. We love responding to questions. We love interesting ideas that we can debate. So we should have fun. And Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, please join me. That's for my solo live stream. Again, ideas and suggestions, and always when Monday or Tuesday, you think about those hounds and how I mean they're in they're sleeping because they've just had it. They've had it up to here with this lack of funding. I mean, so hey, well, I mean, if you can't be bothered to pay, I'm just going straight back to bed. So we're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we might one day get them into a better mood. It's very hard. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.